Okie dokie, this video is now running. Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing very, very well on this fine Tuesday afternoon, or obviously whatever day and time it is for you right now as you're watching this, this video here. Welcome to episode number 37 of Azren's Journal. For those of you who have not watched this series on my YouTube channel before, it's pretty straightforward. This is the segment on my channel where I share my personal language learning journey, and of course, give you guys a whole bunch of different language learning tips. So let's just dive right in today. I want to give you some personal language learning updates to kick things off, and then we're going to jump into our language learning topic, the big piece of advice that I have for you guys today, which is around the real secret, I suppose, to becoming fluent in another language, at least in my perspective. So the first thing here about my personal language learning updates. Number one, LangFest is coming up at the end of August. So currently it is July 30th as I'm recording this. LangFest is taking place on August 23rd, I believe. Let me just quickly double check. Yes, August 23rd, 24th, and 25th. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a language learning conference and festival. I will be giving a presentation about Gujarati. So it's my mother tongue, and it's a language that I grew up speaking with my family. And I'll be doing a bit of a beginner workshop for the language. So I've been slowly but surely getting my brain back into Gujarati, because recently my focus has been primarily on Mandarin. And I have not been putting a significant focus on Gujarati, at least not in recent history. And so I've been watching some more videos and trying to get back into Gujarati and getting my brain more wrapped around it so that I am properly prepared for the presentation that I will have to give about this language. Additionally, I've been I've been slowly inching forward into some more Mandarin as well. For those of you who are not aware, I was in Taiwan for 5 weeks earlier this year. Since then, I've not done a lot of Mandarin, but September is creeping around the corner, and in September, I'm going to be taking some Mandarin classes. So I've been slowly kind of inching my way back into Mandarin and getting my mind ready and prepared for the class that is going to be beginning in early September. So that's probably the biggest personal language learning updates that I have. So let's just get right into our topic. Let's just dive right in. So the quote unquote real secret to becoming fluent. There's a lot of pillars to being fluent in another language. There's many. You have to know some grammar, you have to know a lot of words, you have to understand how to pronounce the language, you have to be able to hear what people say and understand what they say. You have to be able to account for different accents and different dialects. For example, if you're learning English and you're really, really familiar with an American English dialect, but you've never heard someone from England before, when you hear someone from England, it's going to be difficult, maybe your first time hearing them. So there's different accents and dialects, there's reading and writing, there's a lot of different pillars, right, when it comes to becoming fluent. But something occurred to me yesterday, which is that at the end of the day, none of those pillars really matter if you don't have self-confidence in yourself when you are communicating. So quick story, when I was in Taiwan, I met a friend of a friend. And at this point in time, I was, I'm comfortable enough in Mandarin. Like I have an intermediate conversational sort of level. And when I met this friend, for some reason, I felt really self-conscious and really nervous. And so it was a struggle. It was a challenge to even have a 15 to 30 second conversation with this friend of a friend. Like it was really, really tough for me. It was not easy. It was not easy at all. And it wasn't because I didn't have the knowledge. It wasn't because I hadn't practiced enough. It wasn't because I didn't know certain words. No, none of it. I was very familiar with everything that I would have, everything that I would, that I wanted to say in that conversation. I was very knowledgeable. I was an expert in that knowledge, and yet it was still really hard because of that nervousness, because of that. And it's made me realize that there are people who are fluent for all intents and purposes. They are fluent in a target language. When they speak it with confidence. People understand what they said. When others speak to them, they generally speaking understand, and they're able to converse. They're able to do that, but they make lots of mistakes, and yet they're still very, very fluent. There are other people who have way more knowledge, but because they don't have that self-confidence, because they don't just put themselves out there and start talking to other people and everything, because they don't do that, they're not fluent. In fact, interestingly, when I look at myself, right, even looking in the mirror here, and in this case, actually looking at the camera, I see myself as this video is happening. So as I'm looking at myself, I've actually got to be honest. One of the things that holds me back with my personal language learning is that confidence issue, right? And that's coming from someone who really likes languages, and it's coming from someone who actually, generally speaking, has a lot of self-confidence, a good self-esteem and everything. And yet it is a thing that holds me back a lot too. It's why I've met people who've studied a language for less time than me sometimes, and sometimes they come across as more fluent and they're able to communicate a little bit more clearly than me. Yeah, it's something I've seen. I think one thing that is a bit of a cousin, a sibling to this self-confidence issue is perfectionism. That's something I think about. At least for me, that's something that happens. You know, I won't, in many scenarios, not all scenarios, but in many scenarios, I will not want to say something unless I am 100% sure it is correct. Unless I'm like, yeah, that is correct. Yes, that is true. That is exactly how it should be said. And that holds me back, because there's times when if I just said what I think would be correct, I was like 80% sure it was correct. If I just said it, the conversation would have kept going. I would have got the point across. People would have understood. And often I'm second guessing myself. And I think many people do this. You're second guessing yourself on something that actually is correct. And you just have to stop second guessing yourself. Like the number of times I wanted to say something in Mandarin, and I literally, like in my head, I was like, oh, I think I should say it like this. I think I should say blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, instead of saying that, I'll ask the person like in English. I'll be like, hey, how do you say like da 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 da? And the person says it, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like the number of times that happens is absolutely craziness. It is nuts how often that happens. So we have to stop. Like I'm like telling myself actually, to like stop second guessing myself. I have to like you just got to have that confidence, because the confidence is what leads to the fluency. It's not always the knowledge per se. Just even though the knowledge is important, obviously, the confidence is equally, if not more important. Let's give some love to people in the chat. So Luis says, I listen to you while I cook my lunch. Thanks for all the knowledge you share. Thank you for watching. Aigun, don't know how to say that name, says, hello, how are you doing, my dear friend Azren? I'm doing very, very good. Thank you for asking. Hello, language learning lover. Hello, hello. Hi, good to see you. Anything else I want to share about this topic here? I don't think so. I think that's basically everything I wanted to say. It's just that self-confidence is really important. It's a thing that leads to fluency. It's yeah, it's not just accumulating a bunch of knowledge. It's not just memorizing a bunch of stuff. It's not just practicing more. Yeah, it really isn't. The last anecdote I'll share, final little thing, then we'll finish this video. So I speak Gujarati. Let's open up a little bit here. So I feel reasonably down, and actually not even reasonably, I feel quite self-conscious about my Gujarati. Like I really do. I think it's because like my skin color, like I'm brown, I am Gujarati, I've born that. I almost feel like there's an expectation for me to have a good level. Like I feel way more self-conscious way more self-conscious about Gujarati than I do about other languages that I am trying to learn and that I have tried to learn, like way more self-conscious. Even though I'm way stronger in Gujarati in reality than, for example, Mandarin currently. That's crazy to me. That blows my mind. I watched a 17-minute stand-up comedy routine in Gujarati yesterday and understood 70% of it. 70, like 70, maybe even 75, maybe even 80. Like I understood 70 to 80% of that stand-up comedy routine. That's crazy. That in many people's book is fluent. That's like strong. Like if you could just throw on stand-up comedy and enjoy it, like that's a strong level. But I don't feel that confident. And therefore, arguably, I arguably come across more fluent in Mandarin than I do in Gujarati, because I'm less in my head about Mandarin. I'm more confident. I'm more comfortable making mistakes. I'm more comfortable just trying. I'm more comfortable because I don't feel like there's any expectations. Me just trying is generally speaking enough in Mandarin. I don't feel that way in Gujarati. I feel like if I just try in Gujarati, it's not enough, I find. And that's what holds me back. So I got to get over it too. You know, I'm not preaching to say you guys have to be a certain way. Like I have to do it as well. So Elson says, do you have any secrets to remember a lot of words? Yep, I can give you some tips. So if you want to remember a lot of words, number one, patience, right? Patience. It takes a lot of time to remember words. Repetition. It takes time and repetition to remember a lot of words. The number of times I've forgotten words in other languages is crazy. I remember I couldn't remember the word for a kitchen sink. I'm looking at the sink over there. I couldn't remember the word for kitchen sink in French for like a month. Like I learned it, like it was a month of like almost daily, like, wait, how do you say that again? I was living with a French family at the time and like I kept forgetting the word. I don't really have any secrets. I don't really think it's a secret. Just like self-confidence, I've actually almost should change the title of the video. It's almost mistitled in a way, almost. It's not really a secret to have self-confidence. It's really not. It's just something that takes time and years to develop, right? I think a couple little like tricks for vocabulary. Using pictures is a really good strategy. Trying to create memorable experiences with different words is a good idea. Right, trying to actually apply the vocabulary and not just read it in your notes. So try to use it in real conversations, right? Using it in real conversations will help the word stick in your brain because there's a stronger neural connection to it. I actually think language learners, at least for me, one thing that's worked really well is to always, at all points, even when I'm a beginner, try to be conversing, even if it's just via text sometimes with language exchange partners, trying to be conversing with other people in that language has been really, really helpful for me because it forces me to use my knowledge, which therefore helps the stuff stick in my brain deeper. So there's a few tips for you, Elson. Dennis asked me, hey, Azren, can you tell me, is it important to do exercises on translating from the native language to the target language? Sure, I'm not against it. I know when you look at different language learning circles, some people are against doing translation exercises. I'm not necessarily against it. I'm not super against it. I think it can be useful. However, I will say that translation alone, I don't think is quite enough. I don't think just relying on translation is very effective. I think it can be a good tool, especially in the early phases of trying to learn something new in a language. So if you're trying to learn the word for like cell phone, right? It's easier if someone can say, oh, celular in Spanish. Oh, that means cell phone in English. It's easier to make a connection that way. But eventually the translation alone, I do not believe for most people is going to be enough, at least in my personal experience. When I look at different words in different languages, I actually, once I've gotten really comfortable with the new word or concept in another language, it actually becomes very difficult for me to translate that language back to my mother tongue. It's actually really hard for me because now when I say a word in another language, I'm not relying on the translation to say it. I'm relying on something else. Usually when you ask me, hey, how do you say blah, 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 blah in English or in Spanish or in French or in whatever, right? When you ask me to translate a word from a language that I learned into my mother tongue, I actually have to stop and go, huh. And the process that ensues is the following. I think about the word in the target language. I think about how it makes me feel. I think about any images that come to mind when I say that word or when I think of that word. I'll think of that and then I'll go, okay, what word in English makes me feel that way? What word in English makes me think of that picture? What word in English matches what I'm currently experiencing as I think of that word in the target language? Sometimes it's really easy. Like if you say cow, yeah, cow, une vache in French, I know it, right? Or like una vaca in Spanish. Like I just know it. There's no process involved. I just instantly know it. But sometimes, it's not quite that instantaneous, if that makes sense. Not quite. Like I'm trying to think of an example right now. It's like if you asked me, like, I got one. So like if you ask me right now, like, hey Azren, how do you say in Mandarin, how do you say wei tang in English, right? That's a word it's like I'm struggling to explain it. When you order bubble tea in Taiwan, you have to say how much sugar you want in your bubble tea. Like if you say, hey, how do you say wei tang in English? Even now, the process I'm going through is, I'm imagining myself when I order bubble tea. Like I'm picturing what it feels like to say. I'm picturing the flavor of what it tastes like. I'm trying to picture how much sugar that is. And now it took me a moment to find the translation. Wei tang is usually about like 25, 30-ish% sugar. Like whatever the sugar amount should be in your bubble tea, they give you 30% of it, right? So that's like, it took me a while to get that, right? Or like I often get things without ice, right? Even with that without ice word in Mandarin, like it took me a second to think, how do I say that in English? Oh, right. Because it's not the translation that's going on in my mind. Cole says, translation is a different skill from language learning, especially at a high level. You start learning words in the target language with the target language. Yep. Yeah, totally. So, all right. It's 12:57 p.m. I got to leave my house in about half an hour. Got a lot of teaching today, about almost 6 hours of teaching today. So a lot to do. I'd appreciate some comments and likes or dislikes if you didn't like it. Any feedback on the video, would appreciate it. Anything else I want to share? Nope. Actually, final thing for Calgary people. It's a quick little tidbit for the couple Calgary people who are watching this. We've got some group classes starting, some larger group classes starting in 2 weeks for French and Spanish. A couple different levels. It's $75 for the course. It's an 8-week course. Ends up being about $12. Ends up being 12 hours, of education. There will be homework in the classes. I will give feedback between the classes, individualized feedback per person in the class. So you will get individual time from me despite it being a group class. Classes are about 50% full right now. I'd assume they're going to fill up by the time the class starts. If you're interested, reach out. It is the cheapest price you'll find for high quality education in Calgary, period, by a long shot. It's definitely one of the better courses you'll find that is properly structured in my perspective around improving listening and speaking abilities, so conversation abilities, if that makes sense, regardless of if it's a beginner level, intermediate level, whatever kind of level it is. So that is something that if you'd like some more information, please reach out. I honestly think it's, especially considering the price point of it compared to everything else you'll see in Calgary, you will not, it's just the best, it's just a fantastic deal. So if that's something you'd like some information on, send me a message, Facebook, Instagram, at Polyglot Azren, and then we can chat. So, all right, guys, see you. Bye for now.